Hello and welcome to the Unity Minimap tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make a minimap that follows the player around, has toggleable rotation, displays on screen first of all, and also you can zoom in and out. I'll also be showing you a couple different ways that you can do the zoom in and out feature. So if you're interested in this, stay tuned and watch the video. So let's get started with this tutorial. What I have here so far is just a basic minimap scene that I made to test out the map, and here um, each square on this checkerboard pattern represents one unit in Unity, just so we can see the zoom in function a bit more clear. So to start off, what we're gonna do first is create a new camera object. Then for that object we're gonna change the projection from perspective to orthographic, and you can leave the size at whatever it is for now. Then we're gonna lift up the camera, drag it over. It doesn't actually matter if you drag it or you just want to lift it up. I'm gonna make it at 10 now. For now, place 10. Let's just make everything else 0, 0. And you also want to rotate it to look downwards, which should be the x-axis. So you want to rotate it downwards by 90 degrees on the x-axis. And if we mouse over the depth here, it says a camera with a larger depth is drawn on top of a camera with a smaller depth. So it means that in order for our main camera, in what I'm using here is the FPS controller, to remain our main camera, we need to set a smaller depth for our minimap camera. So I'm just going to use -1. You can use whatever you want. And I'm going to rename this into minimap camera. You don't have to, it just makes it easier. So you know what you're working with. Alright, so in order for because if we just run the game now, you'll see we don't see the camera or anything. So the way we get it to display on the UI is go down here. Also, before you do anything else, just delete the audio listener in your minimap camera. You don't need it. You do it by right clicking and go remove component. We're going to create where is it? A render texture. And I'm gonna call this minimap texture. Then I'm gonna go back into my minimap camera and drag my minimap texture into the target texture here. Alright, now let's actually, what this will do is it will give the minimap texture the texture of whatever the camera is looking at. You can change the resolution. It just makes the image a bit clearer. I'm not gonna you see the edges of these reds are now less pixelated and stuff. I'm just gonna leave it like this for now. Alright, next step is to actually get it to display on the screen. Now I'm gonna put it in the top left corner, but with this method you can basically just move it wherever you want. So first off, we're gonna go right click into our hierarchy, go UI, and first off let's create a canvas. Now because this is something I like to do, I'm going to change the canvas scaler to scale with screen size, and I'm gonna put the basic size to be 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080. It means that basically, and you can set it to scale with width or height. It means that it's basically going to, since I do all my games in 16:9 aspect ratio, so it's basically gonna scale all the UI elements with the resolution. If I now go into 2D mode up here, focus on my canvas, right click on it, UI, and I want a raw image. Not just an image, because an image can't accept a render texture, but a raw image. Alright, I'm gonna increase the size a bit to, let's say, 200 by 200, and I'm gonna center it on, anchor it on the top left. You can anchor it easily just by holding Alt on your keyboard and pressing one of these icons. And I'm actually gonna make it slightly larger. Let's go 250 by 250. And you can see now we have a blank square here. I'm just gonna move it slightly lower, so there's like a bit of a, what you call it, a bit of space between the edge of the screen and the start of the minimap. And then in our texture, I'm just gonna drag the minimap texture. And you can see that this actually displays the texture right now. Now there's a couple ways you can make it follow the player. You can just drag it into the player, set the coordinates, no, not the raw image, the minimap camera. You can drag it into the player, the FPS controller in my case, and just set it to 0, 0 coordinates, and you'll see it moves and rotates with the player. Now this is a pretty easy way to do it, and you can just skip to the zoom part right now if you just want to do it like this, but I'm also gonna show you how to make it follow the player via script and how you can actually toggle the rotation of the camera that way. So I'm gonna drag my minimap camera back out, and I'm gonna go add component. I'm gonna call it minimap controller. It's gonna be a C# script. Create and add. I'm gonna open it up inside of Visual Studio. Yeah, sure. Alright, so let's get started. First off, we want it to follow the player. For this, we need a couple variables. First off, I want a public game object target. So this is gonna be the target of our camera. In our case, it's just gonna be the player. You don't have to make this public. You can just search for the player later on. I'm gonna show you actually both ways of how to select the target. Because if I just put it to public game object target, I can go back into Unity, select my minimap camera, and you can see there's a target variable here, and I can just drag my FPS controller here, and then that's gonna be a target. But the way I prefer doing it is to make my target equal to game object with uppercase G dot find with tag. Where is it? Oh, find game object with tag. And then in parentheses, just put a string of the tag. Now I'll show you right now what the tag is. The tag of a game object is, if I go into my FPS controller, this right here. There are some predefined tags. Player is one of them. Usually an object is untagged, so I just select player. If you want to add more tags, you can go add tags and then just add them here. But I'm not gonna add any now. Alright, now if I you can see the target is empty right now. If I run my game, the FPS controller gets put in the target. Alright, so now let's get to actually making it follow the player. Alright, so for this, I want another variable. It's gonna be type vector3 because vector3 is what's used to define positions, and I'm gonna call it camera offset. This is basically if we want the camera to be offset. For this case, we're just gonna offset it in the y-axis, I'm pretty sure. But for whatever reason, you might want to offset in other directions as well. Alright, so for this we want to basically go this dot transform dot position, which means that it's gonna transform. It's gonna access the transform component and the position variable for whatever this script is attached to. And we're gonna go is equal to target dot transform dot position plus camera offset. Now if we go back into Unity, we'll see camera offset appears in here. I'm just gonna set the Y offset to 10 by now, since if we leave it at 0, you can see like the minimap looks good. But if I get close to this blue object, I just see its shadow. I don't actually see the object. That's because it's currently in the headspace of the, actually I don't know if it's the headspace of the feet of the player where the camera is. So like it's clipping through, the view is clipping through these objects and they're not rendering in the camera, which is why you want an offset. Now you can later on add the offset to change if you clip or something like that. I'm just gonna set it to 10 for now, and maybe like in a later video I'll do some more advanced stuff with this camera. But you can see it now follows the player around, but it doesn't rotate with the player. Now some people might want the camera to rotate, some might not. So let's add an option to, with a keystroke, change if it's rotating or not. I'm gonna go back into Visual Studio here. For this we need another variable. I'm gonna bool. I'm gonna call it do rotate, and let's set it off to false by default. Okay, so how do we want to rotate the camera? Well, the way I decided to do it is basically just see if I get the key input R. If I do, then the camera rotating will either, if it's not already rotating, it will start rotating. If it is rotating, it will stop rotating. So let's go. If input dot get key down, and in here we enter the key code, which is in my case a string R. This means that whenever this button is here, if you mouse over it, it tells you what it does. It returns true during the frame that the user starts pressing down the key identified by the name, in our case R. So when the user presses R, I want to do rotate equals to different than rotate. Do rotate in this case. And then we want to do different stuff if rotate is true or false. So let's do if do rotate. Then we want to go this dot transform dot. Now it might, if you go into the game object here, it might be logical to think, oh, it's transform dot rotation, but it's not. Transform dot rotation is a quaternion, not a vector 3, and it's much easier to just deal with vector 3s. So what we do is go transform dot Euler angles actually, is equal to new vector 3. Now, what do we want the X rotation to be? Well, we want the X rotation to always be 90. Because if you see 90 means it's going to look downwards. Let's switch out of 2D view. If we change the X rotation, it starts looking upwards. So we basically want this to always be 90. So for the first field, set it to 90. Then for the Y, what do you want for the Y? Well, we see that Y is it rotating around, which is what we need. But Z is also it rotating around. So what I prefer doing here is just leaving also the Y at 0, and then for the Z going minus target dot transform dot Euler angle dot Y, and end of the line. Else I want to go this. I'm just gonna copy over this dot transform here, and I'm gonna make it 90 0 0. Now you can make a variable for this that you're gonna call default position and then have it reverse back to that every time. I'm just gonna leave it like this for now. So if I go back into Unity now, we're currently not rotating, but if I press R, you see we are rotating. And I'm pretty sure you can just do it with the Y-axis. I just prefer rotating the camera on the Z-axis for this. Alright, that's two of the things, actually three of the things out of the four I showed in the preview that are done. The last thing is the camera zoom. Now there's a couple of ways you can do this, but what we're gonna be basically editing is, if I go into my minimap camera, we're gonna be editing this size. If I were to position this a bit better, let's say I'm gonna offset it by 0.5. You see that uh, wait, no, not 0.5. You see that here in the minimap, up here when I set it to 3, it basically displays 6 by 6 squares. If I were to set it by 5, it would display 10 by 10 squares. So this is basically how we're gonna be changing the size of our minimap, or zooming in and out. So what we're gonna do is go into Visual Studio, and the easiest way and the first way I'll show you to do this is go if, and here's where you define your zoom keys. So for my zoom in, I'm gonna go just input dot get key down, and I'm gonna make J for my zoom in. Mm, what do you want to do here? Yeah, just basically go this dot get component. The component we want to get is the camera component of this game object, so I'm gonna go camera. Then after that, open close parentheses dot orthographic size equal to. Let's just make it. This is zoom out, so I want it to be equal to minus equal 1. And if input dot get key down is k, I'm gonna copy this over and just make it plus equal 1. Now this is like the simplest way to do it. You can of course set some boundaries later on, because you can see that there's only a limited amount we can zoom before the size starts going into negative and it just looks at the absolute value. So like I could go down here in Visual Studio and say if what is it? If this is less than 1, then it's gonna be equal to 1. So now this is the most we can zoom in, and if we zoom out, you see I can zoom out indefinitely. And this is an okay way. You can also limit the zoom out in this way as well. Now this is like uh, the way you can do it if you want to zoom it in equal increments every time. But the way I'm gonna do it is a bit more complicated, where you have a preset array of your zoom levels, and then you basically could just go through that array. Like maybe you want each consecutive zoom to be higher and higher. So what we do for this is we need two new variables. First is public integer array, and I'm gonna call this zoom factor. This is gonna be our array to determine at which level of zoom how large the map will be, and public integer current zoom level. Alright, now we're gonna go into our input that we already wrote down for the map, and here we're gonna basically go and if current zoom level is greater than 0, then what we want to do is, let's see, we want to set this to be equal to zoom factor And here we're gonna actually do a couple stuff. We want it to be equal to our zoom factor with the index of our current zoom level, but we want it at the same time to be the current zoom level minus 1, and we also want to reduce the current zoom level. So I'm just gonna go decrement current zoom level by 1. And then down here, we're just gonna copy this over, except we're gonna set current zoom level plus plus. So it's gonna get increased by 1. So here I'm gonna go and if current zoom level is less than, what is it? Zoom factor dot length minus 1. Since this returns how many elements there are in an array, and we want actually what's the largest index, so that's minus 1. Just alright, that should be it. Now if we go back into Unity, and you can also add to this up here, for example, current zoom level is going to be, I'm going to make it 2, and this is just basically determine how big your zoom in is going to be at the start. So if we go back into Unity in our Minimap camera, you see I have a zoom factor array. Now let's say I want 5 zoom levels in here. Let's make the first 5, 3, 5, 8, 11, and 15. So you see, like, it doesn't have to be the same increment. This way you're limited to how many uh, zoom how many different like sizes the player can zoom in. If you want to add more, you just increase the size up here and then write down whatever you want. I'm just gonna leave it at 5 for now. And let's start the game now. Okay, we're gonna start with a current zoom value of 2, which is the orthographic size 8. If I press J, you see I zoom in to 3 and zoom out to, oh, this isn't correct actually. I think I messed up something. Oh, it's adding them together. Yeah, of course. I need to just delete this plus equal. It was left off from the other code, the other way of doing it. Yeah, now it just goes normally. And that's basically it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more Unity tutorials.